Mantras of our Lord Sri Aurobindo. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says the divine gives itself to those who give themselves without reserve and in all their paths to the divine. For them, the calm, the light, the power, the bliss, the freedom and the whiteness, and the heights of knowledge and the seas of Ananda. Always with our love and blessings, says our Lord Sri Aurobindo. Words of our Lord Sri Aurobindo, taken from the Archives and Research, Volume 6, Book Number 2, Topic Integral Yoga, the Supramental Yoga, Subtopic Integrality, page 140. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, there are many yogas, many spiritual disciplines, paths towards liberation and perfection, Godward ways of the spirit. Each has its separate aim, its peculiar approach to the one reality, its separate method, its helpful philosophy, and its practice. The integral yoga takes up all of them in their essence and tries to arrive at a unification of all these aims, methods, approaches. It stands for an all-embracing philosophy and practice. Most yoga has for its aim one or other of two great ends, either the abandonment of the world and departure into some reality of supracosmic existence, or some form of limited perfection, knowledge, bliss, or mastery in the world. But there is a third objective of yoga, in which there is a harmony between the world existence and the supracosmic freedom God is possessed. The world is not renounced, or rather renounced as an aim in itself, but possessed as the play of God. A selfless and transcendent perfection in the divine existence is the goal in this path of integral yoga. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says the heart of the integral yoga is in a triple spiritual endeavor. It is a realization of the divine, of all the divine by our whole being and through all parts of our being. It includes a discovery, harmonization, unification of our total consciousness, subliminal, supraliminal, superconscient, subconscient, conscient, and its surrender to the divine for a spiritual instrumentation. It culminates in the evolution of consciousness. Integral yoga is integral by the totality and completeness of its aim, completeness of its process, completeness of the ground it covers in its process. This kind of integrality must, by its nature, be complex, many-sided, and intricate. Only some main lines can be laid down, for an excess of detail could confuse the picture. The aim of integral yoga puts before itself, in a sense, the same as the object of other yogas, realization of the divine, but it is not the divine in one of its aspects. To enter into the entire consciousness of the divine reality with all our being, all parts and every way of our being, to change all our ignorant and limited nature into the divine nature, so that it shall become the instrument and expression of the divine reality that is in ourself and essence. And this is the complete fulfillment of our existence, and this is integral yoga. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, to enter into the divine either by the way of thinking mind, or by the way of the heart, or by the way of the will in works, or by a change in the psychological nature, or a freeing of the vital force in the body is not enough. All that is not enough. Through all these together, it must be done, and by a change of our very sense and body consciousness, even to the material inconscience, which must become aware of the divine and the luminous divine. To be one with the divine, to live in and with the divine, to be of one nature and with the divine, this should be the aim of our integral yoga. All yoga is in its very nature a means of passing out of our surface consciousness of limitation and ignorance into a larger and deeper reality of ourselves and the world and some supreme or total existence now veiled to us by this surface. There is a reality which underlies everything, permeates perhaps everything, and in quite another way than the world. It is very obscurely moving by our thought, life, and actions. We attempt to understand approach by a religion and philosophy. At last, we touch directly in some partial or some complete spiritual experience. It is the method, it is the attainment of this realization that we call yoga. But the reality is an absolute or an infinite. Our consciousness, even our spiritualized consciousness, is that of a finite being. It is inevitable, therefore, that our spiritual experience should be not that of a concrete integrality of this absolute or infinite, but of aspects of it. We are, so long as at least we are mental beings, the blind men of the story trying to tell what the elephant infinite is in its totality by our touch upon a part of it, some member of its spiritual body. One experiences it as a self or a spirit. It may be a self of himself in which he finds his spiritual consummation, integrality, infinity, and perfection. It may be self of the universe in which his individuality loses itself forever. It may be a self transcendent in which the ego disappears, but cosmos too is annulled forever in a formless, eternal, and infinite. Another may experience it as God. And God may be either the all of the pantheist, a cosmic spirit, an individual deity, a supracosmic creator, or all these together. All yoga done through the mind alone, or through the heart alone, or the will, or the vital force alone, ends up in some aspect of the infinite and eternal existence and rests satisfied there, and the mind imagines forever. Not through these alone shall Thai yoga move, but through all these at once, and supremely through that which is beyond them. And the end of Thai yoga shall be the integrality of Thai entrance not into one aspect but into all the infinite, all the eternal, all the divine in all its aspects, indivisibly unified together. Whatever is beyond mind and life and body is spirit. But spirit can be realized even on these lower levels in the spiritualized mind, in the spiritualized life force, even in the spiritualized physical consciousness and body. If thou rise not up beyond the mind level, Then, in these realizations, the spirit must need to be modified by the medium through which thou attainest to it, and its supreme truth can only be seized in a reflection, partial even in the widest universality, essential integrality. Rise rather into the supramental levels, then all the rest shall remain a part of thy experience, but wonderfully changed, transfigured by a supreme alchemy of consciousness into an element of the supramental glory. All that other yogas can give thee, thou shalt have, but as an experience overpast, put in its place in the divine whole and delivered from the inadequacy of an exclusive state or experience. And Lord Sri Aurobindo says that yoga is full or perfect, which enables us to fulfill entirely God's purpose in us in this universe. All yoga which takes the soul entirely out of the world existence is a high but narrow specialization of divine tapasya. God's purpose in us is that we should fulfill His divine being in the world consciousness under the conditions of the Leela. With regard to the universal God, manifests Himself triply in the individual, in the universe, and in that which transcends the universe. In order to fulfill God in the individual, we must exceed the individual. The removal of the limited ego, possession of the cosmic consciousness is the first aim of our sadhana. In order to fulfill God in the cosmos, individually, we must transcend the universe. The ascension into transcendent consciousness, the ascension into transcendent consciousness is the second aim of our sadhana. All yoga aims at oneness or union or a close communion or contact with the divine, infinite and eternal. To reach to this union or come by contact, it is necessary to enter or at least open into a greater consciousness than that of the human mental being who is shut up in the limitations of the individualized living body. To arrive wholly at the union or the constant communion, one must enter the consciousness of the divine, whether into its infinite cosmic consciousness or that of its supracosmic eternity. Or else, uniting both these terms, one may add to them that of the individualized divine in oneself, and through this trinity arrive at a perfect union, one satisfying and complete. But the divine consciousness can manifest itself through any and every plane on the mental, vital, physical, or those which are higher than the mental. All human yoga is done on the heights or the levels of mental nature, for man is a mental being in a living body. But mind, if it is able to reflect some light of the divine truth, or even admit some emanations from her power, is incapable of embodying her. There is an eternal dynamic truth consciousness beyond mind. This is in its nature what we call supermind or gnosis. For mind is or can be a truth seeker, but not truth conscious in its inherent nature. Its original stuff is made not of knowledge but of ignorance. All yoga has one supreme object, a permanent liberation from ignorance. Weakness of this limited, suffering human and earthly consciousness is its purpose, and either an escape or a growth and swift flowering into a greater consciousness, beyond mind, life, body, into a wider and diviner existence. But this greater consciousness is differently conceived by different seekers, for in itself it is to the mind unseizably infinite, but multitudinously one. It presents itself in million aspects. To some, it appears as a great permanent negative or a magnificent, a happy annihilation of all that we know as an existence. To others, it's a featureless absolute, annihilation of personality, the world nature is its key, and silence and ineffable peace, its gate of our entrance. To others, it is a supreme positive beyond all positives, an existence, an absolute consciousness, an unlimited beatitude. To others, it is one divine beyond all divinities, an ineffable person of whom all these three supreme things are the attributes. And so, through an endless chapter, as is the power of our spirit and the cast of our nature, we conceive the one eternal and infinite. This eternal and infinite, however we conceive it, is the one ultimate aim of integral yoga. Other smaller aims there are that can be achieved by it and pursued by many seekers, but these are the crowns of the wayside or even flowers of the bypaths, and their pursuit for their own sake may lead us far aside or far away from our eternal home. The object of supramental yoga combines all the others but uplifts and transforms the smaller aims into a part of completeness of the one supreme object. Not to lose oneself altogether in some ineffable featurelessness is its object, but to renounce ego for our true divine person, one with the universal and infinite. Not to abolish consciousness, but to exchange ignorance for a supreme and all containing knowledge. Not to blot out joy, but to renounce human pleasure for a divine griefless beatitude. Not to give up, but to transform all world knowledge, world nature, and existence into a power of the truth of the divine existence. Asceticism is not the final condition or characteristic means of this yoga, although it does not exclude, whenever that is needful, ascetic self mastery or ascetic endeavor. To become one in our absolute being with the ineffable divine and in the manifestation, a free moment of His being, power, consciousness, and self realizing, joy to grow into a divine truth consciousness beyond mind, into a light beyond all human or earthly lights, into a power to which the greatest strengths of men are a weakness, into the wisdom of an infallible gnosis and the mastery of an unerring and unfailing divinity of will, into a bliss besides which all human pleasure is as broken reflection of a candle flame to the all-pervading splendor of an imperishable sun. But all this is not for our own sake, but for the pleasure of the divine, our beloved. This is the goal and the crown of the supramental path of yoga. This change is a thing in nature and not out of nature. It is not only possible, but for the growing soul, inevitable. It is the goal to which nature in us walks through all this appearance of ignorance, error, suffering, and weakness. The supramental yoga is at once an ascent of the soul towards God and a descent of the Godhead into the embodied nature. The ascent demands a one central, all gathering aspiration of the soul, mind, life, and body upward. The descent, a call of the whole being towards the infinite and eternal divine. If this call and this aspiration are there, if this call and this aspiration are there, and if they grow constantly and seize all the nature, then and then only its supramental transformation becomes possible. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says there must be an opening surrender of the whole nature to receive and enter into a greater divine consciousness which is there already above, behind and englobing this mortal half-conscious existence. There must be too an increasing capacity to bear an ever stronger and more insistent action of the divine force till the soul has become a child in the hands of the infinite mother. All other means known to other yoga can be used, and from time to time used as an subordinate process in this yoga too, but they are impotent without these greater conditions, and once these are there, they are indispensable. In the end, it will be found that this yoga cannot be carried through to its end by an effort of mind, life, and body, any human psychological or physical process, but only by the action of the Supreme Shakti. But her way is at once too mysteriously direct and outwardly intricate, too great, too complete, and subtle to be comprehensively followed, much more to be cut out and defined into a formula by our human intelligence. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, man cannot by his own effort make himself more than man, but he can call down the divine truth, its power to work in him. A descent of the divine nature can alone divinize the human receptacle. Self-surrender to a supreme transmuting power is the key word of integral yoga. This divination, this divinization of the nature of which we speak is a metamorphosis, not a mere growth into some kind of superhumanity, but a change from falsehood of our ignorant nature into the truth of God nature. The mental or vital demigod, the Asura, Rakshasa, Pisacha, Titan, vital giant, and demon are superhuman in the pitch and force and moment and in the make of their characteristic nature, but these are not divine, and those are not supremely divine, for they live in a greater mind or life power only, but they do not live in the supreme truth. But the supreme truth is the only truth that is the divine. Only those who live in a supreme truth consciousness and embody it are inwardly made or else remade in the divine image. Our Lord says the aim of supramental integral yoga is to change into this truth consciousness, the supreme truth consciousness. But this truth is something beyond mind, and this consciousness is far above the higher mind consciousness. For truth of mind is always relative, uncertain, and partial. But this greater truth is preemptory, and the whole truth of mind is a representation, always an inadequate, most often a misleading representation, even when most accurate, only a reflection, truth's shadow and not its body. Mind does not live in the truth or possess, but only seeks after it and grasps at best some threads from that robe. From its robe, the supermind lives in truth and its native substance, form, and expression. It has not to seek after it, but it possesses it always automatically and is what it possesses. This is the very heart of the difference. The change that is effected by the transition from mind to supermind is only a revolution in knowledge or in our power for knowledge. If it is to be completed and stable, it must be a divine transformation of our will too, our emotions, sensations, all our power of life and its force. In the end, even of our very substance and functioning of our body. Then only can it be said that the supermind is there upon earth, rooted in its very earthly substance and embodied in a new race of divinized creatures. Supermind at its highest reach is the divine gnosis, the wisdom, power, light, bliss of God, by which the divine knows and upholds, governs and enjoys the universe. The supramental yoga is a path of integral seeking of the divine by which all that we are is in the end liberated out of the ignorance and its undivine formation into a truth beyond mind, a truth not only of the highest spiritual status but of a dynamic spiritual self manifestation in the universe. The object of this yoga is not to liberate the soul from nature, but to liberate both soul and nature by sublimation into the divine consciousness from whom they came. The aim of ordinary yoga is to liberate soul from nature, or perhaps sometimes to liberate soul in nature. Our aim is to liberate both soul and nature into the divine. Our aim is to pass from ignorance into divine light, from death into immortality, from desire into self existent bliss, from limited human animal consciousness into all consciousness and God consciousness, from the ignorant seeking of mind into the self existence knowledge of supermind, from obscure half animal life into luminous God force, from the material consciousness. It is at the high line where the surrender can become absolute that a divine Gnostic consciousness commences, and the first authentic, unconditional workings of the supramental nature. The first word of supramental yoga is surrender. The last word also is surrender. It is by a will to give oneself to the eternal divine, for lifting into the divine consciousness, for perfection, for transformation that the yoga begins. It is in the entire giving that it culminates, for it is only when the self-giving is complete that there comes the finality of the yoga, the entire taking up into the supramental divine, the perfection of the being, the transformation of the nature. Its object is the harmony of a total spiritual realization, experience, supreme consummation of the spirit and nature. This yoga is called integral yoga because its object is integral, covering the whole field of spiritual realization and experience. It takes existence at its center and in all its aspects and turns it into a harmony at once single and entire. It is the method of an integral God realization, integral self realization, integral fulfillment of the being, integral transformation and perfection of the nature. Says our Lord Sri Aurobindo. Will continue.